And if you find yourself in that position, you better know your rights. And that's what Richard and the AIM attorneys have made their bones on for all these years, is know your rights. And they've gone all around the states, all around the country, and talked to groups about knowing your rights. It's not illegal to be a biker. That's where that started. What was it, about 30 years ago, when they started going around and talking to people about what to do if you're pulled over, what to do if you're stopped by the police, what to do if you're in an accident. It's all important information that needs to be shared and remembered, because ignorance of the law is of no use. Remember that. And that's what that gets across to you, all these talks that they do all around the country. Something else we found out about sharing information is way back when Ncom started, most of the states weren't sharing information. What you had going on in your state was of no business to the people in the state next to you, or let alone around the country. They weren't sharing information, they weren't working together, and that was one of the main thrusts that Ncom had, was sharing information. And back in the old days, we used to deforest all kinds of forests with the paper that we would print on and spread around the country and let people know what was going on. Press releases and stuff that we were trying to encourage states to share information, so we were pulling it together and doing it. Way back when, I used to scour all the MRO newsletters and the newspapers and whatever news we could come across, and we put together a report that we would send out all around the country. And it was our Ncom Biker News. And it was to share information, let people know what was happening, not only in their states, but across the country, around the world, so that the more information you had to work with, the better off you were when you were going and lobbying your own state legislatures or being in your own courthouses, because that information was really important to share. Then back in about 1995 was the first time I found out that not all mice were fuzzy, and you could use a mouse to get onto this thing called the internet, back when John Kerry first invented it. And we found that we could use it to our own advantage. And so we started compiling all this information and sending it out to every organization that had a dial-up modem. Remember those? Well, let me just give you an example of some of the stuff that we put out in our Ncom Biker News. I got to put these on for that. It sucks getting old. By a show of hands, how many people in here are getting older? All right, some of you are still paying attention. This is just an example of some of the stuff that we put out in our Ncom Biker News every month. And this goes out all across the country to all the organizations and concerned individuals. Of course, we reported last year about Missouri becoming the 32nd state in the country to repeal a helmet law. We also reported about how Idaho became the 4th state in the country to pass an anti-biker profiling law. And all this is important information that other states can work on and work with. Recently, we've talked about the highway bill that's in Congress right now and how it includes several pro-motorcycle provisions. For example, it further prohibits motorcycle-only checkpoints, which is where they were only pulling over motorcyclists and giving them tickets, going over their bikes, looking for things that they could find, doing what Slider was just talking about. It also includes expanding the profiling restrictions by not allowing funding for profiling. It also furthers our riders' advisory role to Congress, making sure that everything that they pass in Congress that has to do with transportation takes into account motorcyclists. We talked about the RPM Act, which is needed to help save motorcycling. They're trying to get rid of racing. They're trying to get rid of all racing vehicles. They don't want race cars. They don't want racing motorcycles. And they're trying to put a stop to those. So the RPM Act would make sure that those are protected. We talked about how motorcycle sales are way up despite the pandemic, that there are more motorcycles being sold, which is kind of counterintuitive. You wouldn't think so, but that's the facts, and that's some of the stuff we put out there. We talked about the retaliatory tariffs that started in Europe, and they tried to tax our motorcycles when they're coming over, which made it prohibitive to buy different motorcycle brands. So the U.S. retaliated by putting tariffs on the bikes and parts coming here, which, by the way, has now been rescinded. So we've worked on that, gotten that rescinded. More countries are banning gas-powered vehicles. This is something that almost every issue that we come out with on our Ncom Biker News Bites, there's some new country that's putting a restriction like 2035, 2030, some as soon as 2025, that they will no longer allow gas-powered vehicles to be sold in that country, new vehicles. Internal combustion engines they're trying to make them dinosaurs, and we're trying to keep them around, make sure we can feed them. This last issue that we put out, there was a survey that was taken that said a third of motorcyclists would stop riding if the only thing they had to ride was an electric motorcycle. How many here might stop riding if they banned gas-powered motorcycles? Maybe, yeah. You might want to try it. I actually rode one of those Harley electrics, and they're kind of fun. I wouldn't own one, but they're kind of fun. They're talking about mandatory motorcycle inspections in Europe, all across Europe. They want to have mandatory annual inspections where you have to take your motorcycle in and they inspect all the lights and everything that's on it and make sure it's functional. And those are a pain in the butt if you've ever had to go through them. How many here remember back when we used to talk about seat belts for motorcycles?
They got them in Europe.
Well, guess what? They're a topic again. And the reason they're a topic again is because they've designed motorcycles with computers on board that can tell whether or not your accident would require the motorcycle, the seat belt, and it would either let you go if it predicts that it's an accident that you should be off the motorcycle, or it'll keep you on the motorcycle in a seat belt if you're not. Computers are making way for a lot of this stuff. And here's an interesting bit. We did a report in last issue about no left turns, and we found out that UPS actually, when they do their routes for their motorcycle or for their deliveries, they plan their routes so that they don't have to make any left turns. And they have found that it not only decreases accidents, but it increases their fuel mileage. So, something to consider. Left turns are our arch enemy. So this is the kind of information that we're putting out there, so that your view doesn't always have to be hindsight. It can be foresight. Because forewarned is forearmed. And that's what a lot of the information we put out through Ncom is all about. And we don't have to kill trees anymore. We put it out online. And how many people here receive the Ncom News Bites? All right, an awful lot of you. If you don't and you want to, it's free of charge. We don't send out a bunch of solicitory bull crap. We send it out once a month, and it keeps you informed on what's going on all across the country, around the world, so that you know what's happening and how you can act on it. And all you need to do is give me your email address, give me your card, give me a piece of paper with your email address on it, whatever, and we'll get you signed up for it, no problem, because we want to keep you in the loop so that information can be passed on, and we can keep everybody informed and everybody on the same page and move forward together.
And it's free.
I said that.
Okay.
It's free, says Richard. Doc?
I just want to say that when you put that out, I have our chapters, they put it in their newsletter. So if you're getting it, maybe your members aren't onto it, but it's really great information. Bill researches the hell out of this and puts out the facts. And like he says, he doesn't put any garbage in there about buy this, buy that. It's straight facts about motorcycling and how it affects you and your riders and your members. But I really highly recommend that you pass it out or get it into your newsletters, because it's really dynamite information. We do that, and if there's a couple of things in there that are really important we need to do, we'll make copies and hand them out. I'll do it at my state meeting with my presidents and hand it out to them. So it's really a great tool, it truly is.
Thank you, Doc. And the only solicitation we put in there is we mentioned that it's sponsored by the law offices of Richard Lester, because he sponsored a lot of this stuff, and we appreciate his sponsorship. And it's being picked up, like Doc said, a lot of the chapter newsletters now printed, a lot of the state newsletters printed. It's on websites, blogs, magazines like Thunder Roads, Easy Riders picked it up. We estimated that over 1 million motorcyclists a month were exposed to the news, whether they read it or not, but at least it gets to them. Bor?
One thing that you do in Europe is handlebars, the height, and different risers, and a lot of things you put on a motorcycle so it's more comfortable to ride it. That they want it to be a stock bike with stock brakes, with all the shit. Some of the brakes aren't very good, and you can get better ones. They will not, if they go through an inspection, they will not allow them.
Yeah, most of Europe is very anti-customization. And like Bor says, there's an issue now that when they do institute this, where they're checking out your bike every year, that they will not pass a lot of stuff that's customized. All right, well, thanks a lot, and I don't want to keep you getting any older. Thank you.